last few videos we've been looking at the residents of this home here back in the early 1900s, and that was Tom Reed and his wife Anna and their children. We've been taking excerpts from this book here, The Salvager. As we come near the end of the book, we find that his family is growing up. The children are going their own way pretty much. And his son Tom, who he had great hopes of taking over the salvaging business, wanted nothing to do with it. He wanted to go into engineering or perhaps a different type of business. And as we begin chapter 14, we see that the Reed children lacked for nothing. But Captain Tom still secretly hoped, counting on the Reed blood to affect his son's final decision. Necessary methods of persuasion annoyed him. He realized he was facing the result of his overindulgence. He had yielded without question to his children's whims. In days when few of the younger set were given cars, the young Reeds drove their own. Alan had now been entered at National Park Seminary. He had glanced indifferently at the bills for her clothes. Expense was unimportant if her health improved and she had what she wanted. Anna's goal from the beginning had been education and privilege for her children. She had built a library at home, read to them, encouraged their interest in cultural pursuits. He guessed Anna was right. Education was important. Maybe if he had been more interested, he would have learned in youth the word forms that meant so much to Anna. The rightness of her speech was like music. She used words as he used cables and torches and chains. Clara was now in high school. When she coaxed for a new fur coat, more spending money, a different car, he yielded. He could not deny his children anything, and Virginia, now entering her teens, and his idol, had her wishes granted almost before they were expressed. I always thought from reading this book that Tom's indulgence with the children was a result of his guilt from not being at home enough with them. His absence from home was amplified in the First World War. When that broke out, the Navy wanted every ship that was available. So Tom was busy salvaging the ships, fixing the ships up so they could float, and then delivering them to the Navy. During this time, Tom's reputation as a salvager was becoming known nationwide. And when a terrible catastrophe actually for Halifax happened, sinking many ships, Tom was contracted with the government to salvage 30 ships, his largest ever contract. Let's see what the book has to say about it, and then we'll go into it in a little bit of detail. But back in the year 1917, war affected many lives, and the Reeds did not escape. Events were happening that would deprive the family of Tom for many months to come, perhaps years. On December 6th, the city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, suffered incredible devastation when the Swedish ship Emo, a 400-foot package freighter, was leaving the harbor and the big French freighter, Mont Blanc, was entering. They collided. Having cleared port, the Mont Blanc was on her way with a war cargo of TNT when a fire broke out in her hold. With all speed, she returned to Halifax, and when abreast of Dartmouth, the crew took to the all-boats and went to Dartmouth. Tugs rushed to quench the fire if possible, and all hands were lost except, curiously enough, the sailors from the Mont Blanc. There were probably 150 ships in anchor in the harbor, convoys waiting to depart for Europe. The impact of the explosion shattered the area for miles around. Steamers and tugs lay on the shore, parts of them back in the fields and streets, on rooftops, the stern frame of one in a field, 12 miles away. Ships in dry dock were blown to pieces and submerged by the tidal wave, with complete loss of life. A schoolhouse within a picket fence was destroyed with its 240 pupils, but the fence remained undamaged. The roof of a train shed was snatched off while the shed was spared. A candy store clerk only a few feet from a customer survived, while the man was killed. A chimney 156 feet high turned on its base and not a brick was dislodged. A woman driving a team of horses was blown to pieces. Horses, too, perished. The harness was unscarred. Canadian Minister of Marine contacted Tom Reed from Ottawa, and he left at once for the scene with Lewis Myers. The train could approach only within 3 miles of the city of Halifax. Arriving in a howling blizzard, the men had to make their way on foot through scenes of horror. Canadian Coast Guard officials helped them find lodgings in a private home, one among a few undamaged. 30 ships were allocated to them for salvage by the insurance company. So how could an explosion like this occur? An explosion that was the most powerful man-made explosion up until the time of the atom bomb. First of all, you have to realize that this was wartime. The harbor was filled with ships, both freighters and warships. Freighters waiting to be escorted out into a convoy. And there was a harbor that was protected by submarine nets, as you can see in this diagram here. Normally a ship carrying munitions would never be allowed in the harbor. The munitions would have been unloaded at an island, McNabb Island or another, before they ever got to a populated area such as Halifax or Dartmouth. But because this was wartime and the harbor master worried about the ship staying outside the submarine nets and being vulnerable to German attacks, he allowed ships that had high explosives into the harbor. New York dockworkers loaded the French vessel Mont Blanc with its doomsday cargo of picric acid, TNT, gun cotton, and benzo. It was all headed for the war in France, but Mont Blanc couldn't cross the U-boat-ridden Atlantic alone. On the night of December 1st, Mont Blanc slipped out of the New York harbor by night and headed to Halifax to join a convoy. Normally there would be a red flag flying showing that there was munitions aboard and high explosives, but it flew no flag warnings on this cargo that night, or any other time during the war when it was on open sea. A ship laden with explosives would be a prime target for a German attack. A Halifax pilot boarded the ship outside the harbor around 4 o'clock on Wednesday, December the 5th. But it was too late to enter. The anti-submarine nets had been closed for the night. The Mont Blanc would have to stay at sea one more night. Inside the nets in Bedford Basin, the Belgian relief ship, Emo, waited to head out in the morning. Coal for its boilers had arrived too late for it to leave that day. Now the captain was behind schedule. Emo had no cargo on board. It was heading to New York to collect emergency supplies for civilians in war-torn Belgium. It carried a large sign on its side, Belgium Relief. The sign was supposed to discourage German submarines or U-boats. At around 7:30 a.m. on December the 6th, the Navy opened the gates in the nets at the entrance to the harbor. Mont Blanc was the second of several vessels headed up to the harbor. It still raised no warning flags. Around the same time, Emo raised anchor in Bedford Basin. The basin was crowded with vessels waiting to join convoys. Emo approached the Narrows, increasing the speed to almost 7 knots as it cleared the ships in the basin. Emo encountered a tug on the way out. The tug's captain thought Emo was going too fast for the Narrows. The tug veered back in toward Halifax to avoid Emo, and Emo stayed to port, actually in the wrong channel, to avoid the tug. Then, through the morning haze, Emo faced Mont Blanc, moving up the Narrows. Mont Blanc blew its whistle once to say it had right-of-way. It would maintain its course. Emo should move to the right, but Emo blew its whistle twice in reply. Translation, I'm staying where I am. I have a very good imagination, and sometimes I can put myself in that particular place in history and time period, and even now I can almost hear the whistle blowing.
I said starboard, now! Where you mean, Canna? Reverse engine! Reverse engine! Look at those lunatics. Schultz! I will not gun my ship! No! What are you doing? What are you doing? Reverse engines. Full astern! All right then, come on, you fat pig, turn! Turn! Yes. Yes. We'll make it. No, she's reversing engines. It's bringing her around. They're going ahead. Full stop. Full astern. Don't pull out! For God's sake, I'll go up! Tranen eda ikashasto.
Look at this, loves. We got some entertainment.
What's she looking at? What's outside? Hey, look at that!
It was an explosion of a magnitude that no one had ever seen before. 325 acres of downtown Halifax was completely devastated. Windows were blown out as far as 50 miles away from the harbor. So many people were killed from the explosion, and so many more were killed from the tsunami that followed the explosion. And many more were killed by the elements because 3 bad snowstorms followed the explosion and hampered the relief effort. And of course it delayed the memorials and the burial of the dead. The munition boat, the Mont Blanc that's mentioned here, there was nothing left of it except a couple pieces that were found 12 miles from the shore. The Mont Blanc exploded before the Emo could make headway to open water. The shock wave swept over the deck, tearing away the smokestack and the superstructure. Shrapnel perforated the ship's hull, and the captain was killed, as were 5 of the crew of the Emo. The tsunami lifted the Emo and threw it against the Dartmouth shore. Helmsman John Jonathan was knocked unconscious and awoke to find himself neck-deep in water. Moments later he found himself back on board the Emo, the wave having receded. Amazingly, the 4 masts were still intact. Some casualties could have been averted because of the flag not being flown, the high explosive flag not being flown coming into the harbor. People didn't realize what was on the ship, and fire crews were going out to the ship trying to put the fire out. They were trying to tow the ship out, but they couldn't get that ship unstuck from the harbor next to Pier 6. And this boy here was among the volunteers that helped, and the paper wrote him up as a hero. The only people that really knew was the crew of the Mont Blanc, who took to the lifeboats, and because of their language barrier, weren't able to warn the people even on shore because they spoke French. And of course the harbor master knew, but nobody else did. They just thought it was a wonderful show. This is what the city of Halifax looked like before the explosion, and this is what it looked like after the explosion. There's a few more before and after shots here. This is the sugar factory plant before the explosion, and this is what it looked like after the explosion. This is Pier 6 before the explosion, the one that you saw in the film clip of the Mont Blanc coming right up to, and of course in the second picture here it's completely gone. In the film clip you saw the school students. This was at the Richmond School, and 87 of these students perished in the explosion, many on their way to school, and stopped to watch the explosion. But even if they hadn't stopped, they would have still perished. They wouldn't have been far enough away. The film clips you've been watching is from the film Shattered City, the Halifax explosion. And this is available to watch on YouTube. It comes in 2 different parts, so you may want to watch that. It's not all historically correct, but they got the main things right. One of the things, if you look at this picture here, you see that the fire engine is basically the old steam type that's pulled by horses. But in the film, you see that there was a motorized version coming down the shore, as we'll look here.
Come on! Get the hoses on her!
Well, they did get that historically correct. They did have a brand new motorized version of a fire engine that was just delivered not too long ago before the explosion. And here you can see the crew along with their pride and joy, and they named it the Patricia. As you can see, it's printed out on the hood actually. It survived partially intact after the explosion. It doesn't look good, and it doesn't bode well, of course, for the crew. They would have been killed instantly. Of course, there's always someone willing to profit off a tragedy like this, and here you see that they're trying to make some money selling postcards. And we show a couple examples of those postcards here as well. Here we have a couple photographs of the explosion. The most immediate and devastating effect of the explosion was a shock wave produced by the detonation that was equivalent of 2,989 tons of TNT. The shock wave traveled at a speed of more than 5,000 feet per second. At the center of the blast, the heat produced by the chemical reaction was in excess of 9,000 degrees. The heat and pressure pushed a fireball of hot gases and debris consisting of soot, unburned coal, carbon from explosives, and shrapnel high into the sky above the harbor. As the gases cooled, a giant cloud formed. The soot, carbon, and shrapnel fell as a deadly shower. Around the Mont Blanc, the water was vaporized by the heat. The pressure of the explosion sent a 50-foot tidal wave out into the harbor and up into the Richmond neighborhood for 3 city blocks. Ships were torn from their moorings, their decks swamped, superstructures crushed. Members of their crews either killed outright or drowned. The tsunami was felt by ships miles outside the harbor. Tom Reed had his job cut out for him. One of the ships that Tom salvaged was this ship here, the Caracas, and here's what he has to say about it. In salvaging the Caracas, when they went in, they found 40 bodies, and when clamming out her grain cargo, they encountered dismembered bodies throughout. It was rumored that the grain was dried and taken to Quebec to be sold. I hope they did a good job on getting all those parts out. 24 hours a day, the work of salvaging went on despite blizzards, sub-zero weather, and the most adverse conditions. The work of restoring the supply line to needy allies overseas, out beyond proud submarines awaiting their prey. Tom Reed was away from home longer than he ever had been before. When he finally got back, again maybe because of his guilt, he told Anna that he had a wonderful gift for her and the family. But as we'll see in our next video, it was a gift that almost ruined his daughter's wedding reception and caused a violent confrontation when the police carted Tom off to jail.